There are people who stumble into the spotlight, and then there are people who seem built for it. Annabella Ivy falls firmly into the second category. Born and raised in Miami, Florida, she carries that city's energy in everything she does. Bold, unapologetic, colorful, and completely her own. By the time she turned 21, she had already built a digital presence that most creators spend a decade trying to reach. And what makes her story genuinely interesting isn't just the numbers, it's the path she took to get there. Annabella was born on July 18, 1804, which makes her 21 years old as of 2026. Growing up in Miami gave her an early exposure to a culture that celebrates vibrancy and self-expression. She's spoken openly about being a proud Latina, and that identity runs through everything she puts out into the world, from her fashion choices to the way she carries herself in front of a camera. Miami is a city that doesn't do quiet, and neither does she. What a lot of people don't know about Annabella is that before any of the modeling, before the Instagram grids and the brand deals, she was just a girl who loved video games. She started playing at around 7 years old, which means gaming has been part of her life for well over a decade now. She's been active on Twitch, where she built a small but genuinely engaged community of people who connected with her not just for her looks, but for her personality. In her own words, she described herself there as just your average cute gamer girl, and there's something refreshing about that. Here is someone who could easily lean entirely into one lane, but instead chooses to exist in multiple worlds at the same time. She also loves dancing. If you spend any time on her social media pages, you'll notice that movement is a big part of how she expresses herself. There's a joy to it that reads as completely natural, not performed for an audience, but something she genuinely enjoys. That authenticity is part of why people keep coming back. Annabella officially stepped into the modeling world in August 2021, when she was just 17. That's a young age to be putting yourself in front of a camera professionally, and the early days of building any kind of platform require a certain level of confidence that not everyone has at that stage of life. She had it. From the beginning, she leaned into her curves and her identity without apology, and the audience responded to that energy almost immediately. By 2026, her Instagram presence has grown into something genuinely significant. Under the handle It's Annabella Ivy, she has built a following of over 1.2 million people on Instagram alone. That's not the kind of number you reach by accident. It reflects a sustained effort, a consistent visual identity, and a real connection with the people who follow her. She also maintains a strong presence on X, formerly known as Twitter, where her audience has grown well past the 200,000 mark. Across platforms, her reach continues to expand, and the engagement she receives reflects a community that's actually invested in what she shares, not just passive scrollers. What sets Annabella apart in the modeling space, though, is something that goes a bit deeper than follower counts. She came up during a moment when the conversation around beauty standards was shifting in a meaningful way. The fashion and media industries were slowly, sometimes reluctantly, beginning to make more room for bodies that didn't fit the narrow template that had dominated for so long. But Annabella didn't wait for an invitation. She created her own space. There's a difference between someone who benefits from a trend and someone who contributes to a movement. Annabella has been the latter by simply showing up consistently, by posting confidently, by refusing to minimize herself for anyone's comfort. She became part of a larger shift in how curvy and plus-size women are represented online. Her audience isn't just watching her for entertainment. Many of them are watching because they see themselves reflected back, and that kind of representation carries real weight. She has described herself at various points as a public figure, a content creator, a gamer, and a model, and all of those things are true simultaneously. That layered identity is actually one of the more modern things about her story. The old model of celebrity required you to be one thing, to fit neatly into a single category. Annabella's career doesn't work that way. She moves between spaces fluidly, and her audience follows her across all of them. In terms of her aesthetic, she has a distinct visual style that feels Miami through and through. Warm tones, confident poses, a kind of effortless glamour that doesn't feel overly produced. Her content walks a line between aspirational and accessible, which is genuinely hard to pull off. Too polished and you lose relatability. Too casual and you lose the aspirational quality that keeps people engaged. She manages to hold both at once, and that balance is a big reason her numbers have continued to climb rather than plateau. She's also someone who has remained fairly grounded in terms of how she presents herself publicly. In an online space that often rewards exaggeration and performance, she comes across as someone who is genuinely just doing what she enjoys and inviting people along for it. Whether she's sharing a fashion look, connecting with her gaming community, or just posting something from her daily life, there's a consistency to her voice that makes her feel like a real person rather than a carefully constructed brand. As she moves further into her 20s, the trajectory of her career looks strong. The modeling industry's relationship with diverse body types has continued to evolve, and creators like Annabella, who built their platforms during that shift, are now in a position to influence where things go next. She's not just a beneficiary of changing standards. She's someone who helped normalize them for a generation of younger women who grew up seeing her on their feeds. At 21, with a million-plus Instagram following, a loyal community across multiple platforms, and a career that started before she was even out of her teens, Annabella Ivy is one of those creators who makes you realize that the traditional routes to visibility have fundamentally changed. You don't need a magazine cover to matter in fashion anymore. You don't need a record label to have a fan base. You need a point of view, consistency, and the courage to show up as yourself. And she has all three. Whatever comes next for her, campaigns, collaborations, expansions into new creative spaces, the foundation she's built is solid. And for the people who have been watching from the beginning, it's genuinely exciting to see where that foundation leads.